Hi, everyone. Welcome to the April Housing Committee meeting. We have some guests tonight. We have several people from our community here, I see. Just so you know, our public be heard will be at the end of this meeting rather than the beginning when we usually have it. And I ask the guests not to interrupt our discussion here, but we will have a public be heard and you can speak for 2 minutes at the end of the meeting. We also have some very special guests, our consultants from HRNA, which is the consulting firm that Ulster County is generously paying for us to work with. And oh, here's Lisa. Hold on, I have to let her in. And they're going to do a progress report for us tonight to share what we've all been working on since January, I believe we started together, and what we'll be doing for the remaining few months that we'll be working together. So do you guys want to introduce yourselves just quickly?
Great, I'm happy to start. Hi, everyone. Great to meet those of you who haven't had the chance to meet yet. My name is Brett Kalazzi. I'm a partner at HRNA Advisors. And as a quick introduction, HRNA is an economic development and real estate advisory firm based in New York City. We've been around for almost 50 years. And we work across the country and a little bit internationally on a range of issues that relate to cities, urban areas, and increasingly regions beyond cities and urban areas, on dealing with issues of development, dealing with issues of neighborhood investment, community investment, and quite a bit of work around housing and trying to build healthy housing markets across the country as communities across the country face challenges very similar to Woodstock's in terms of constrained supply and increasing costs, and generally trying to figure out how do we meet housing needs while preserving the communities that we all love and appreciate. I'm also a relatively recent transplant to Catskill, New York, and so not too far away from Woodstock, and have the pleasure of spending a lot of my time in the Hudson Valley. Frances, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Frances Goyes. I'm a senior analyst here at HRNA Advisors. Great to see some familiar faces and pleasure to meet those that I haven't met before. Like Brett said, and like Catherine said, we've been working with the town for about 4 months now, so time sure does go by fast. And we're really excited to be here and give you an update, hear your thoughts. Also joining us is Jayla Hart. Jayla, do you want to say a quick hi?
Yeah, of course. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jayla Hart. Very happy to be sharing this virtual space with you all today. I'm a research analyst in HRNA based in our DC office, and I've had the pleasure of working with Catherine and Kai and the rest of the Housing Committee for the last 4 months to just learn about what's happening in Woodstock and see how we can best be of use to help you guys address your needs.
Thanks. I just wanted to mention that Kai Lord Farmer from Ulster County is also here tonight, but he has to jump off a bit early. So thank you for coming, Kai.
Great. We prepared a few slides just to kind of walk you through what we are all working on together, and then to provide an update on each of our different work streams. And then we'd love to save time for questions and make sure you all have a chance to dig in. So with that, Frances.
Yes, I am sharing. Let me know if you can see the screen. I think it's still all black right now.
Yep.
Good.
We're live.
Excellent.
Okay, great. So I shared a little bit about HRNA and who we are. I'll just share just a few more words about the kind of work we do. You can go to the next slide, Frances, to give you a sort of sense of the spectrum of work around housing in particular that we're at work on across the country and locally. We think of housing work in sort of 3 different categories, each of which relate to some of the work we're doing with you all in the town. The first is on strategies and plans. What are existing conditions and what is the trajectory of housing markets in each individual place we're working? What are local needs and desires, and what are certain strategies that can achieve those needs? So right now we're working in central New York, in the Syracuse metro area, which is on the cusp of seeing a major economic investment for the first time in many decades, and an influx of population. And so we're helping them think through, given where the housing market is today in Syracuse metro area, including all the municipalities in the 6 counties surrounding it, and the projected demand in housing, how can you meet that housing need in a way that's responsive and respectful of the communities and both the scale and the size of each of them without creating the kind of pressures and sprawl and displacement that most of us don't want to see in our communities. So we work on strategies. We work on policy design and programs. So once you understand, well, where do we want to get to? What are the individual programs that can be helpful? Inclusionary zoning, thinking about different funding and financing programs, thinking about ways to promote certain kinds of development or restrict other kinds of development. What are the different tools that governments and others have to support one housing outcome or another? We help design those programs. And then finally, on the transaction side of things, for specific projects, how do you put all the pieces together in terms of funding and zoning and other tools to deliver a project of varying scales? We, at the very high end of the scale, we work with Amazon and their $2 billion housing fund to create low-cost debt, to inject low-cost debt into projects, both rehab projects and new development projects. And we also work on projects of all sorts of scales, including in Westchester County, on trying to finance new development, affordable housing. Here in Woodstock, there are a couple different tasks that we've been asked to support with, and they're really on two parallel tracks, related but kind of discrete work streams. The first is on thinking about, as you've all been doing for the last few years and beyond a few years, engaging your neighbors in conversations around what are the housing needs in Woodstock, what are the challenges, what are some possibilities of addressing those challenges, thinking about some of the messaging and some of the ways of conducting that outreach that leads to productive conversations and tries to get people aligned around what are things we can all agree that need to happen, or what are the tough decisions we need to make together to align on certain strategies. And so we've been working with the committee and Kai and team on a few different pieces. One is a playbook that will help the committee and the town with those conversations with neighbors. What is the context in Woodstock? What are the different concerns that we hear from neighbors? What are counter statements to some of those concerns? And Francis will walk a little bit through how we're thinking about that playbook. And then what are some of the different tools you can use and sort of moments you can use to engage around conversations around housing. The second is some of the materials that can be used in engagement, including launching a survey, which we'll talk about in a minute, of the community around housing needs. And then finally, we've already started having community listening sessions to hear from folks in the community about housing needs, housing concerns, and other things. And we'll talk a little bit about the planned community event in June. And then on a parallel track, we're also here to help with possible site development and assessing where are there sites across the town, especially publicly owned sites or civically owned sites that provide opportunities for housing development. What are different scales of housing we could potentially build on various types of sites? And then what are the economics of that? What's feasible? What kind of funding do you need? What kind of gaps do you need to close in order to make certain types of funding possible? And so we'll be helping think through that really starting this month and through June. So with that, I'll hand things back to Francis to talk a little bit more in detail about some of these different pieces, where we are, where we're going.
Excellent. Thank you, Brett. So project status, this timeline basically lays out the different tasks that we've been working on, as well as some critical deliverables, or the little black circles that you see. So we had our kickoff late January. We've been working since then. The community engagement playbook, which is one of the big deliverables, that will go through multiple iterations as we keep hearing from the town through listening sessions, through the survey, through the community workshop. So we presented an outline, we have received feedback. We will present a full first draft very soon, I believe in the next month. But then that final deliverable will be done in June. Likewise, the listening sessions, we had 2 sessions in mid-March. The housing survey will be our May deliverable. And then the large community-wide event, we've selected June 20th, and it's in the community center from 6 to 8 p.m. That's a Thursday. It seemed like one of the best days to be able to get the community center, which seems to be in very high demand. And then finally, the housing sites inventory, since that involves less interfacing, we are working in the background, working with Deborah to look at what the town is already doing and putting together for the zoning analysis, feasibility, publicly owned sites, and thinking about what types of housing make sense in Woodstock and what financing for those would be. So that's the area we're working on there. Just a little bit of an overview of each section. So the community engagement playbook, this is really a handbook for folks from the committee, from the town, or others that are interested in learning more about how they can support housing. An easy way for them to both understand existing data, existing challenges, and be able to talk about it. So it will have definitions of a lot of the housing terms that you hear. So what is AMI? What is capital A subsidized affordable versus market rate? What are subsidies? How does this work? What is LIHTC? We're still trying to figure out all of the different things within LIHTC. So we thought it'd be helpful to have that. Overview of the state of housing in Woodstock. So really get some numbers of, again, who is struggling in town to pay, renters versus homeowners, how have rents risen, how have home values risen. You know, I think there was a several 100% increase over COVID in terms of the cost to buy something in Woodstock. So we'll have a little bit of that in the context, and also talk about the local housing initiatives. And I'm sure you know, because you're all in this committee, but you know, there's the home share program, there's a potential burgeoning housing trust, there's Woodstock Commons. So really for folks to be able to talk about, these are the strategies that Woodstock is involved in, and also talk about factors that are potentially challenging. So how do we talk about density? How do we talk about the impacts to the environment that new development can have? What's traffic like? What are new roads, etc.? And built in addition is community engagement strategy. So this will include, for example, how-to guides for the listening session we had. This will include our takeaways from the workshop and how to put together a good workshop, a survey, etc. And we hope this will be, as Kai says, an evergreen playbook. So while some of the housing data may, you know, in 5-10 years change, a lot of the different challenges, concerns, etc., will still be able to be used, as are some of the strategies that we're using to talk about it. Moving on. And again, and within each playbook area, how we'll talk about different concerns, say density. We'll have, okay, this is the concern that's identified. These are some potential, if not counter statements, some explanations and some reasons why that may help lower the risk of that concern. Relevant town data where we can find it, as well as rural best practices and national best practices. So a mix of case studies, a mix of data, and a mix of counterpoints. So for example, something we hear in other communities, we haven't really heard it a lot in Woodstock, but one is building affordable housing will lower my home value. I don't want to be near an affordable housing development. And really, you know, there is no proof that this is the case. When we talk about affordable developments, we talk about mixed use, mixed income developments. They have to be maintained to a high standard, regulated by the federal, state, usually sometimes local, if local government has funds in it too, for 30+ years. So that's one way to counter this argument. There's also a lot of research that different groups have done in universities and elsewhere that show that values stay the same as in other parts of town. And, you know, and there's also relevant research to Woodstock itself. So for example, home values have risen by 84% in the last 4 years. And so we'll have sort of these tidbits in a more drawn out way for each of those housing challenges we see. Now, the challenges that we're talking about in the playbook are derived both from what Catherine and the committee has told us previously, as well as what we've heard in the listening sessions. So to that end, as we said, we had 2 listening sessions with different community members that were identified by Catherine, Deborah, and others in the housing committee. And these were the main themes that we heard. We heard there is a need for affordable housing, both renters, homeowners. Housing is specifically important in a community of artists like Woodstock, who maybe have different sorts of income flows, maybe have different space needs, but are really a critical element of the identity that makes Woodstock so unique. Likewise, there's this link between economic sustainability and having affordable homes. If you can't live in town, it may affect your ability to be able to work in town, and you may move somewhere else, say Kingston or elsewhere, where it's more affordable to live. And how does that then affect Woodstock's own community? How does that affect the ability for folks to stay in place as they get older, et cetera? Environmental considerations. So we want to have typologies and new housing types that respond to what Woodstock looks like, what the community fabric is. And we want to be mindful of that and also be able to address the perceptions around it. So to that end, with community perceptions, we know Woodstock Commons went up about, I think, 10 or so years ago. And when it was first built, there was a lot of pushback about having it built. It took a very long time to get it through, but now it is a part of the community, and it's been more or less accepted by a lot of people. So having that perception and talking about, it's one thing before something is built, but what really happens once it's done, if it's done in a way that is sensible to what the town needs. And finally, for this first task of community engagement, we have the community-wide, no, sorry, we have one more. We have the community-wide survey. So this will be an online survey. The goal will be to, again, continue understanding local housing needs and concerns. As we said, we had the listening sessions, but that was maybe 20, 25 people to get an initial read. And now we want to span far, wide, and hear further. So this will talk about community preferences and what folks find most of most need. So for example, would you rather live in a community that maybe you have a smaller home, but because the homes are smaller and the land is smaller, you can walk to downtown? Or what are the priorities? Housing preferences will have different photos of different types of homes, from accessory dwelling units to small scale multifamily to mid-scale multifamily, to really get a read of what folks think about those typologies and where they think they would be suited for in town. And again, trying to think more of any additional housing concerns that we want to make sure are addressed in the final playbook. Okay, now this is the last part of the community engagement piece. It's the community workshop. Again, that's on June 20th. We will be supporting and helping run this event, but of course, we're looking to the housing committee to be of support, to work with us as we put it together, as we want to have mediators. We want to have folks that can hear from community members that come about housing, about concerns. So we would love for you to join us. So this is our first invitation for the June 20th workshop. And the purpose of this will be, once again, to increase awareness of housing needs, understand concerns, and continue to understand those suitable typologies for town. And the way that we're envisioning this run of show, we'll start with the housing boost tour, sort of a tour around Woodstock. So we'll have different sort of tables with posters about different initiatives that have happened in town. And that's, it'll be the home share program, it'll be the land trust. We'll have one about the Woodstock Commons. We'll have one about housing data that we've looked at. and some of those typologies and a map for folks to tell us what they think is suitable where. We want to have a very small keynote panel where we're hoping to have somebody from RUPCO speak, and we're trying to identify one or two other folks that are have been rooted or have worked in housing in Woodstock to just talk about the different types of housing that are needed. And then we'll split the, and you know, we'll have to assess how many people are there, but our goal is to have small group discussions. So we'll have different tables for folks to be able to talk more at length about any housing concerns that they have. And finally, a sort of report out session where folks can address the entire group. And we left that to the end. So hopefully by then, folks have been able to hear from each other, have seen the housing booths, and can be able to give any final thoughts before we close off the workshop. So that's the community engagement piece of this work. That second piece is the housing sites assessment that Brett talked about. And for this, we've identified, and by we, Kai, Catherine, and other folks from our working group have discussed 3 main typologies that they want us to look at in terms of housing feasibility. A fourplex, so this is one structure with 4 different homes within it, 4 different units. Pocket neighborhood, which is basically a planned unit development, but usually the homes themselves are of a smaller scale. And these can also be, they can be single families, they can be duplexes too, although they do get a little bit bigger. And what makes pocket neighborhoods special is that they're very much designed around a common. So usually parking is not necessarily in front of your house, it's all parking to a side of the development. And it really encourages folks to walk around, to have different activities, especially for thinking of multi-generational households or multi-generational folks that want to live here. You know, you can have families, you can have seniors, you can all walk around and feel safe and in place. And lastly, small multifamily. So the thought of this would be various small scale developments. So 2 floors, 8 units in each, but have a number of these structures so that it can support a LIHTC financing, which, you know, you need 40 to 60 units to really be up to scale. So again, not a building, nothing tall, everything that abides by the Woodstock zoning, but be able to have financing to make it subsidized and affordable. And what we will do as we talk about what is a financial feasibility study, we'll look at what the development costs are. So for a fourplex, what are the costs both for architects, engineers, as well as for folks to actually build? What is the brick and mortars? What's the cost of land? And what are the expected returns on it? We'll look at expenses. So, okay, how much is it to get a loan for this? What are the expenses with operating, you know, roof repairs, replacements, etc. And lastly, we'll get to that income. So if it's rental, okay, what are those rents? How much rent do we need in order to pay for the operating costs? But are those affordable? And how do we keep those at levels that are affordable to town residents? And if there is a gap, what subsidies or incentives are there, both at the federal, state, and local level that can support this? And this is the least exciting, but this is sort of what it will look like. So we'll have an Excel model, showcase, okay, this is what acquisition costs, these are the hard, soft, etc. These are the financing structures that we can put in. This is what operating is, rent, and really be able to talk for you all, for the committee, for the town to say, all right, this is what it costs to build a fourplex. It's impossible for them to be affordable at levels that we want artists, that we want our seniors, that we want our young families to live in, unless we get this amount of subsidy. You know, can the county put this together? What other ways? Can we have a housing trust fund? Where else can we have a subsidy available to make these homes affordable? And so that is, I've been talking for way too long now, but that's an overview of the project. And now please, I'll open it up for any questions or comments.
Thank you, Brett and Francis.
Of course.
Great overview. I have a question about the financial feasibility.
Yes.
Because we touched briefly on this at our meeting last week. For the second type, which is the pocket neighborhood with the single family or maybe duplex homes, we talked about home ownership as a possibility for those homes, which and Francis mentioned it's hard to find subsidies for single family housing for purchase. So, but we still, I mean, I personally still think that would be an interesting model to create this type of financial model. So will that work in your financial feasibility study? Like, are there ways that you can finance it, or is it just private financing?
Well, everything is possible if you believe. So for example, if there's suitable land in town that is willing to be given at very low or no cost, that would get rid of this land cost, which would be one way to subsidize, right?
Yeah.
Another one, we know of at least one state program, I believe, Brett, that has a subsidy for homeownership development. So that is one that we will explore as well. It is generally more challenging to find subsidies for homeownership because there's a question of, there are many different questions in terms of selling the home. Does the person that bought it at a discount get to keep all the equity? If it's sold, when it is sold, should it go to somebody of the same limited income? There's a question about HOA fees, which sometimes can become unmanageable for folks if the incomes are lower. So it comes with different questions, but it is definitely something that we will explore if that's the town's interest.
That would be great, I think. I know it's a lot more work for you guys, so.
Love it. Deborah, yes.
Yeah, sorry, I have a question and a comment. My question is, what's the time frame? I know you talked about leaving us with things, materials and things that we can, let me lower my hand, that we can, build on and everything, and that kind of makes sense. So it's not like this is a snapshot or one-off enterprise. I mean, it feels to me like this is very holistic, and I really appreciate all the effort and thought you've put into everything you've done thus far that we've worked on with you, and you're coming out for the small listing sessions, and how thoughtful you were and listening to the community. But I just wondered if is this like, do we revisit this in 5 years? Do we, is there some recommendation on these things? Because situation change, conditions change. And then I'll tell you my comment about something related.
Yes, that's a great question. And when it comes to building momentum and working on, building more homes and making sure that folks understand housing needs, it is an ongoing, forever initiative. But we do recommend, at least in places where we've worked, there's usually, if it is a housing plan or a housing engagement, we usually every 5 years or so do recommend doing an update, especially around the data needs and what do the numbers look like now, what's been built. I think it's also important, and this wasn't part of our scope, but having a way to measure and evaluate how you're doing. So, what does success look like? Is it more folks being on the housing committee? Is it having, say, annual or biannual housing workshops? Is it, having X many more affordable units built per year? So, and I do know that at least this initiative is part of a greater sort of housing plan, Catherine, correct me if I'm wrong, but
Yeah, that's right. We're trying to build a housing action plan by having these listening sessions and having the community workshop and trying to gauge where the community is on all of this and incorporate their feedback into our action plan.
Yeah, I think the idea of targets and sort of coming out of this year's effort with some clear, over the next 5 years, we aim to do XYZ thing would be really helpful in order to then say, a year or two from now, look back and how are we doing toward it and see if there need to be pivots. So it's not, but it does take time, right? So even if you came up and said, this is our target, rather than constantly pivoting, it really is important to stick to it and say, let's get one of these projects done, and let's try to move forward with this, see what impact this new policy has before we try to tweak it too much. So there is a little bit of runway we would suggest you allow the initiatives you want
That's,
to.
those are great answers, all of them, and that's exactly what I was kind of hoping to hear from you, to get your expertise and experience to weigh in as this unfolds for us. So we're not making wasted steps, and it's not just a snapshot, but it's something that can have lasting impact in the community and have there be ongoing sort of feedback loop, I guess. My comment that I wanted to make is, and you may already know this, and I want to pick up at some point, Catherine, I didn't get to talk to you about it, but I've been a long proponent of the Community Preservation Act in the state legislature that would authorize towns to not only have real estate transfer tax for open space, but also to have create a community preservation fund for housing. And it's a very live legislation that's actually under consideration in the New York State Legislature right now. And so it's one of the things that I'm hoping this committee can look at and make a recommendation to the town board to do a resolution of support. But anyway, I'd be interested, to the extent that you all from HRNA work in New York communities, what you think about it, if it's something that has, potential to be a resource, because we're talking about, whether it's first-time home buyers or pocket neighborhoods and things like that, things that are maybe non-traditional housing typologies that might benefit from something like that.
definitely, I 100% am in support of any tools that can help support people in different ways that are needed. Sometimes that's vouchers, sometimes that's down payment assistance, sometimes that's being a soft loan in a light tech development, and it can be challenging for towns that don't allocate funds for housing to then be able to work on the initiatives that they need.
Yeah.
So to the extent that that's possible, I
So
think
it's another tool, and I'm hoping that it'll be available to us.
definitely.
John,
John,
did you have a comment, question?
I had a couple questions, and one was about Brett called it the policies and programs track. I think that that HRNA sometimes work on. It doesn't seem to be a big part of what you're doing with us, if I understand what that category is. But I'm just wondering if you've worked with other small towns like Woodstock and have examples of policies and programs that they've adapted that we can make sure we're understanding the full range of options that are available for communities like Woodstock. So that was my first question. I don't know if I can answer that or if you want to hear them both.
We'll take your second one too.
So the second one is very unrelated, but as part of what you're doing, we're doing community outreach, and we've had the listening sessions, and we're having the community program in late June, and there's some talk about whether we need more listening sessions or not. But I'm wondering, as you organize these things, one way to think about them is you try to understand, who your allies are and try to understand who has good ideas for how to address the problem. And another way of thinking about it is you need to understand a cross section of where the community is coming from and try to understand the full sort of array of attitudes and opinions in the universe, in the city about what you can do. And I'm just wondering how you think about it from that perspective.
Well, I'll start with the first one, which is that I think that the way that the county has structured the Housing Smart Communities program generally is to sort of start with some of the early steps of establishing a housing plan and thinking about, outreach and sort of getting consensus in the community about vision, and then to sort of pivot to funding communities to think about some of the policy design pieces too. So there's, I think right now there are probably 3 or 4 different communities within Ulster County that are doing some version of a study like this, and most are sort of starting with the outreach piece or some form of the planning piece. And but to your question about what are some of the tools, I mean, I think we should probably be able to share, Francis, a few best practices. Well, we'll have some best practices in the playbook, on things like very bespoke funding programs and subsidy programs that are local in nature and not sort of based on the kinds of federal programs that fund a lot of affordable housing that don't make a lot of sense in smaller communities. Programs related to tax and abatements and ways of being more standardized about how that works. We do a lot of work around inclusionary housing and zoning and sort of requiring affordability in certain types of housing when you build more than a certain amount. It doesn't work depending on market conditions and the market strength in a place and the amount of development that's happening. So sometimes that does make sense in communities like Woodstock, sometimes it doesn't. But there are a range of tools that we use that are, some are zoning strategies, some are financing strategies, and some are more about restrictions on or support for tenants and homeowners. So that help across the board.
Yes, no, I agree. And just adding to that, I think it also depends on the scale, right? So if you'd want another Woodstock Commons that does support a lot more people to be able to stay in place, to live affordably, that does require a little bit of a sort of highlighting to developers that you are interested in this, right? Because I think developers, I previously worked as an affordable housing developer, and it's challenging if you want to develop somewhere where there is need and that those those homes will be immediately inhabited. But if it takes 5 or 10 years to get support and your zoning and your approvals, it makes it really hard. So I think the awareness and the engagement around housing is a really big first step. And then of course there's different programs for supporting tenants, there's down payment assistance. So if there is in addition to inclusionary zoning, there's also the ability to request that X percentage of development costs or like what it pays to buy a very expensive house goes into a pool, a fund for affordable housing. And that can mean down payment assistance, or it can mean voucher support or other ways. So it really is thinking of like, especially given that the town is it's a very strong market, how can that be leveraged in order to help support the entire community? And we will have definitely the financing tools, we'll include that in the feasibility analysis. And the others will mention, some of them will mention as best practices where possible in the playbook. And then, we're always, this is what I love doing. So there's always, if there are any other questions or comments, we love to keep iterating and brainstorming and helping communities of every size get more homes.
And on the question about outreach and sort of who we're trying to reach and how to engage, I mean, something that's a conversation we had really early on, and there's always going to be a contingent in any community that is unreachable, right? And oppositional to what you're trying to do, and there's going to be a contingent who's gung-ho and really excited about what you want to do, and those are two audiences that you're probably not going to convince either way or the other through an effort like this. But then there's a ton of people who are in between, who have certain perceptions about housing, who have certain concerns about housing. And, part of this effort when we work across communities is reaching those people, some of whom are very engaged, some of whom aren't, and trying to do a few things. One is using engagement meetings and materials to educate, not in a preachy way, but just to sort of demystify some of the things that are true about housing in Woodstock. reframing a little bit, the challenges that are faced and what will happen if we don't solve them. Putting out there some imagery that changes people's perceptions of what housing can look like, which is, I think, in Woodstock, a big piece of the concern. But then a second is really understanding where the concerns are and where there are unique and completely valid concerns that need to be addressed. It's sort of the question of, what do you need to see in order to believe that what we're trying to do is good for you, right? Like that, which is it's a distance we have to bridge for a lot of people. And even in our community listening sessions, where I gathered the folks who joined were, on the supportive side of things. There were some real concerns that came up about, like, do we know the extent of our aquifer capacity and when that will be breached? That's something that's really important to be able to explain to people, that we do know this, and this is something that we feel comfortable we won't have an adverse impact. And the same with other infrastructural things. The topic of community context and what makes Woodstock and the look and feel of the place came up. And in certain communities, that can be sometimes a screen for other things. We just don't want development, period. And character and context is just a code word. But in Woodstock, there's something to that, right? Woodstock is a very special, unique place that, and its look and its feel are very closely tied to how people have experienced Woodstock for many, many years and what reason people are there. So there's something to that, right? And if we just came in and said, no, you have to build housing that has to be 4 stories, or it has to be multifamily, or that's the only way we can do it, that's not going to get us very far. So there is a real, the listening sessions truly are large part listening and understanding, what are people feeling about the tensions that arise when you try to meet a need like housing in a community like this. Hopefully you change some minds in the process of having those conversations.
Yeah. Any other questions for our HRNA team? Okay, I think you guys can end your workday while we keep going.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so much
all.
for coming.
Thanks for having us, and we'll
That was a great presentation. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's wonderful. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. I just want to, since it's almost 6 o'clock, it is 6 o'clock. I just want to do a quick organizational planning moment for the community workshop, which is on June 20th. I'm going away on May 10th for 10 days, so I wanted to get a lot of stuff in place before I left, or by the time I get back. And I'm going to talk to HRNA exactly about which pieces they're delivering. They said they would do, for example, give us the housing overview data that we're going to start with in the beginning for the presentation, and some other things. And we brainstormed some people for the panel. I think that was last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago. I can't remember. And I'm going to reach out to Emily Hamilton from RUPCO, Sonia Lemus Wright, who is a housing developer in Kingston, a small developer, Christine LaValle from Habitat, Ulster County Habitat. And then if one of those people doesn't work out, I was thinking of Adam Bosch from Patterns for Progress, because I know he lives in Saugerties, so he would be close by.
What
Deborah?
about, oh, go ahead, Deborah.
Oh,
Deborah,
Deborah,
you're
you-
good.
I just wanted to suggest, so I know you're going to get into this today, but if you would include, and I know it might be too many, but either Steve Rosenberg or Rebecca Crimmins from the group that's doing the Affordable Housing and Open Space Coalition. In fact, they're having something on May 7th. I'll send that around to everybody here in Red Hook, where they're doing a project.
all right, Sabina mentioned that.
I mentioned that, and that was going to be my suggestion, was to have
Um,
somebody from that.
okay.
Yeah, I
group.
mean, Steve, comes from the land trust community, Rebecca from the housing community. They've both been working with all of these different groups, and I think, and they're local.
Oh, they are local. Okay, great.
Yeah,
Do you have
Steve's
their
in Rhinebeck and Rebecca's down in Kerhonkson.
And their work is inspirational. I think it'll
Very
excite the
inspirational.
community.
Yeah,
Do you have their email addresses?
I do. I will
Okay,
send
that would be
them
great.
to you.
You can send them to me.
I will.
Can someone volunteer to reach out to the people or the organizations for the housing booths, the tables at the beginning of the workshop?
I'm happy to help you in whatever way
Okay.
you need.
Oh,
So,
thanks, John.
I can get some too. If you want like the family of Woodstock housing,
Yeah, exactly.
okay.
Family Woodstock, Repco, I think it's different from Emily because Emily does development. So I
Yeah,
don't know who
I'll
the
get stuff
outreach
from them as
person
well.
would be. Okay, so I'll get in touch with you too. And I will figure that out. And then I need volunteers to moderate the table discussions.
I offered earlier today with you.
Thank you, Lisa.
I'm happy to do that too.
All
I
right,
also
great.
wondered if we wanted to add a table on accessory dwelling units for people who are interested in
Yeah.
that.
That's a
Well, I
great
think-
idea.
Yeah. I think we
Sounds
should,
good.
maybe we could work together to have a handout on that or something for the housing committee table.
That could be one of the booths, the ADU booth.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so.
Well, I was thinking it could be part of the housing committee just because we don't have a group that can sit at the table for ADUs, so. we
But I
could-
just
Let
feel like
somebody
if we
from
could, if we could like put together information and have someone there who
Yeah.
could engage people who are directly interested in that question, that could be helpful.
I mean, both the city of Kingston and Ulster County are doing initiatives on ADUs that include models, and of course, the county has some design competition, there's a bunch of things, and Repco is involved in some of that as well.
Aren't there subsidies too, like financial subsidies for, I think you get like $5,000 or something there. I heard that from somebody recently, that they give you some money to do it.
Right.
I said at the last meeting that we had, I think it was a subcommittee meeting, that the county is trying to put together a playbook for ADU. So a first place
Yeah.
to start might be to say,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
let's put together
Justify.
their information.
Mhm.
Good idea.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully there's stuff out there. Actually, I remember Home Share, because we shared the library fair booth with the Home Share program last summer. They had a lot of ADU materials that they had gotten from AARP. So we could look into that too. They have really nice handouts about how to build ADUs.
Yeah.
If you want, I could sort of, you know, be in charge of collecting and organizing that information for the day.
That would be great. Thank you, John.
Yeah, I'm interested in ADUs as well, so if that's Phil, I'll try something else, but
No, but maybe Howard and I could work together on that. That would be
Yeah,
fun.
that's a great idea.
Are you okay with that, Howard?
yeah, sure.
Catherine, I'm just happy to fill in wherever you need.
Okay.
Me as well.
Me too.
If you
We
need a
just
table
do,
or you just need
yeah.
reader, you need organizing, whatever you need, I'm just happy
Yeah,
to.
I think we're gonna need a small group to hammer out the talking points for these discussion tables. So
Mhm.
I think he wants to do that with me, because I think we need a very clear script to follow.
Totally.
Yeah.
Should we be working with HRNA on that or just on our own?
I think so, but I have to clarify that with Francis. There wasn't really enough time tonight.
Honestly, that sounds like Rebecca.
Yeah, that sounds like,
I think Rebecca already volunteered to
yeah,
moderate.
she's not here. Let's give her work. Yeah. She's on vacation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta
Okay.
say, it really depends on my schedule right now. May and
That's all
June
right.
are getting crazy.
I know.
I'll do what I can.
I know.
I'm good with assignments, so if you want to give me something, I'll do it.
Well, one thing I was thinking, I've been to a few of these things now where people don't bring signs for their table or their booth.
Mm.
So they show up and they sit at the table, but they don't have a sign. So I was thinking Lisa, being an artistic person, could make signs for like the Woodstock Housing Alliance and Repco and all these other people that are coming. Some of them will have signs, but I know some of them don't. So that's
But
just
you
one idea.
need an identifier in the middle of each table, whether it's a little.
Exactly. So people know what it is.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I can do like use our logo and then have who's hosting the table and what the idea, bullet points for what they're presenting.
Okay.
That's
Something like that. I mean, unless there's other ideas, I'm happy
Well, we'll figure it out. I'm just giving, we've got
Execute
some,
whatever.
yeah.
However you
And then
see it.
I'll get together with the outreach committee. We can talk about handouts. We have some good ones from last year, but I think we need some new ones. So
I think we also need a robust strategy for getting people aware of this so they can come if they want to. And
exactly.
if we could have a little tiny web page with something that a barcode could take you to with, little signs in town that people could scan just to try to, or even things you could
I
put in
think-
mailboxes. I just feel like it's hard to reach people and we need to think hard about how to do that well.
Exactly.
QR codes are the best. They're so easy to generate, and then all you have to do is go click.
I think
your
we
phone.
talked about that. We're gonna do website. We're gonna do like Hudson Valley One and radio stations, even some paper. I'm probably gonna send some of my kids out with paper to hand to people.
Oh,
but,
that's
Definitely.
Yeah, we have to make a really good flyer, so we're gonna have to figure out what it says exactly.
So somebody mentioned radio. I think it'd be good to get on some station.
Woodstock Radio is awesome. I don't
it
know
has
if
to
you
be
listen
Woodstock
to it.
Radio.
We used to do that when we
Love
had
it.
things to share, and it was terrific, and they're usually pretty open.
I have a
So-
neighbor that works there, so
Yeah. Great.
Skipper's ex-husband owns Radio Woodstock, and I've met him many
Oh,
times.
great.
Too.
That would be helpful.
Yeah.
I know Howard tried to contact them last year for one of our.
Yeah, I
communities.
never got a response.
Yeah, it was tough. So
can-
What's
can
it? No,
put-
but I'm talking about the more like weird one, the one that has like all the alternative kind of
Oh.
eco
Hmm.
whatever. It's on. I don't even know what number it is, but I listen to it all the time. It's either that or NPR, and it's they're located on a mountain here, and I think it's like relatively. Rachel's does something on it. I know that. I don't know what the
like
actual
the Wolf.
name.
I think it's
Well, we
Maybe
the Wolf station.
It's not the one in the church because that's like commercial. This is like
But
a
the
local.
That WDST, that's the Woodstock
That's the
station.
commercial station,
Yeah.
but they're not bad.
um,
And actually, you mentioned Rachel. Rachel's now co-chair of the chamber.
Right,
And I think they would
Yep.
be helpful also in.
very
helping
helpful
the
to get
word out.
people there. Yeah, because she came to one of our listening sessions.
You
She's
did.
an amazing expediter. She gets stuff done. She's
Yes.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An organizer.
Mhm. Okay, so we're probably gonna have a bunch of little meetings leading up to this, so I'll figure
The
out. how
outreach,
to do those.
yeah.
Yeah, outreach and everything. So, because there's a
Right.
lot of pieces to put together here. So.
Yeah, it's gonna be great.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I think it'll be good. And then I guess the last thing we have is approval of the March minutes.
Huh.
Anyone have any comments on the last month's minutes?
No, I thought they're really good.
Okay. Thank
I
you.
have comments about June. I see that you have me down, but I won't
Okay.
be at that meeting or do the minutes because that's Aunt Yours graduation day.
All right.
And I got a senior.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah,
Thank
wow.
you.
Well, we can
A
switch
lot
it.
happening.
Yeah, that's a busy week. You shouldn't have to do that. So we'll figure out someone else who can do it for you.
When am I supposed to do minutes? I know I'm supposed to do them.
You're
Um,
May. You're
okay,
May,
yeah.
Lisa.
That's like in a minute. 5 minutes for the minutes. It's
A month from now.
not now, right? I haven't screwed
One
up.
more
have
month. Howard's doing it today,
No, it's
Okay.
May 9th is the next meeting.
I? Okay, that's soon.
29th.
29.
Yeah.
More
Okay.
than a month.
Do we
Okay,
should,
we have
If
a
you want,
motion.
Lisa, we can switch if you want. You and I can
Stresses me
switch.
out.
I'll do May.
Okay.
Stresses me out too.
The
But
good thing
I
is-
was
I've been
stressed
seeing all
out.
these ads for these little machines that you can buy that will like take everything and make it like the AI will organize it. And I keep thinking like I need to buy one of those because I don't want to do the minutes. Like I'm scared to do the minutes.
Well, the
My
good news
tip
is that it's
my tip is-
recorded. so
I
you can
did
listen to the
I
recording.
did the Zoom on my iPad and then I just used my computer and typed messy stuff and then cleaned it up later.
Mhm.
That's my tip.
Okay. Well, I'm
I
a
like to
handwriting
type and take
person.
notes. I'm better at typing than writing, so for me it was that made sense.
Do we have
Tanisha,
a
if we
motion?
want to switch, we can do that.
Yeah,
We can like text each other or
Sounds
just
good.
agree now.
yeah, I'll do May, you do June.
Okay, cool. That buys me some time.
do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move it.
John, second, Deborah. Okay, all approved? Aye.
I mean, I wasn't there, so I guess I don't vote.
Okay, that's all right. All right, now we have a little bit of time for public be heard, 2 minutes per guest. Do any of our guests want to add something?
Me.
Max.
Hi, everyone. I know most of you, not all of you. And for those of you who don't know me, I formerly was the Woodstock Land Conservancy Executive Director. And what many don't know about me is I actually have a master's in real estate development from many years ago in the city when I was concerned about low-income housing development. So, which is kind of why I'm interested to join you tonight. I'm just going to speed stuff, and I can also write it up in notes to send to Catherine. So I just wanted to make sure, in all of the considerations that you're doing, and I'm sorry I'm jumping in when you've had so many conversations because I might be repeating things, but just to be a reminder that the 2018 comp plan additionally underscored people's desire to keep the town, protect the natural resources, which in some fashion can be contradictory to the impulse to create housing. But I just wanted to remind you as you're going out, in public, and then that the Complete Streets effort might coincide with some of the things that you guys are working on. That committee, might have some things worthy to knit together. And I was curious about how you are canvassing the opinions of the kids or whomever is working in all of the stores in town and the restaurants and things for their housing needs. It may not be a questionnaire. It may require literally going around and asking. And that I did see March Gallagher, our controller of the county, put something up today or yesterday on Facebook with some statistics about rural expansion and things. So I'm sorry, I don't know what specifically it was, but somebody might want to look for that.
Okay.
And Xena Elementary, I see, is doing some work on housing for their people. I wonder if there's anything extra that might be utilized by the community. And lastly, John, I think was there too, John Ludwig. Last night, the public hearing for the noise ordinance got really crazy. And I say this to you in warning you for June, that even, and I think housing hits a chord too, that you really have to think through how you might present that so that you don't get into the morass that was yesterday. And one thing for sure is an amplification with a microphone and speakers. But it was a complete mess last night.
I did watch it, so I'm aware of the issue.
Yeah.
I am hoping that there are a lot of people in Woodstock who will be supportive of housing, as long as we can.
I know, but it gets so out of, the misinformation is incredible. So people get so worked up. I mean, it really was just nobody could, talk.
Right.
It was terrible.
Well, this isn't a public hearing, so hopefully it'll be a little more organized.
No, but I still think that you have opportunity to maybe lay groundwork that hopefully can prevent that kind of thing. Greg Gattin on WDST is a wonderful interviewer. He knows the community well. I think he'd be great to talk about this stuff, and he probably would. And then the last thing I mentioned to John Huber the other day is, keep your eye on Woodstock Elementary and see, what's happening there. And then also the land, the acreage around it. Because I think there's 17 acres. My memory is there's 17 acres there.
There are, and we are looking. We're
there
looking
models of affordable housing being built inside of those kinds of buildings?
Yes, there are.
So
Yeah.
perfect.
Where was that?
Woodstock Elementary
The
School.
elementary school.
If it closes.
I like Tanisha's comment. No, we will not close that school.
We're already preparing. My son starts
Maxine.
kindergarten next year. It's not
Oh.
happening.
God forbid. I don't want to see it closed.
No,
Maxine, can I ask you about Xena Elementary? Isn't that the school that's now a lineman school?
Correct. And so
So
they're
what-
doing some housing apparently for the linemen, but maybe, it's a big school. Maybe there's excess. That
They're
can be
doing it
used.
there.
Are they doing it there, or what are you hearing?
Yeah, when you go by now, you'll see construction. They've taken off the the brick wall, the curtain wall in certain areas, and I'm told by the planning board that
Oh.
they're making housing.
Okay, I didn't know they
That's
were
a private
permitted.
school. It's very expensive. I spoke to one of the guys that is going there and it's like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of
Yeah,
dollars.
yeah, it is, it is. But the
That's Xena.
couple that owns it is out
Yeah.
of Saugerties, and they seemed pretty accessible a couple years ago when they came around. I don't know, you know, like, I just don't know how many units they need and if there's a surplus there for somebody. So
There's a private school there now? At Xena
it's a
School?
former Kingston school for
Right.
elementary. And these folks bought it for the Lineman Institute. They charge a lot of money to train the utility linemen.
Right.
They
They
don't
are
have
making
job
some units.
placement either, which I found shocking.
What was that, Lisa?
They don't have a job placement department. So it's like the Barbizon School for Modeling, like back in the day, you know, you go there, you learn how to do something and they don't give you a job. And you spend like hundreds of thousands of dollars.
We
to
all
get
fell for that.
a few of these guys. It's crazy.
Mm.
It's a shakedown. I'm not thrilled.
Right, well, thanks, Max. Thanks for those helpful comments. And
You're
thank you
welcome.
for coming tonight.
And thanks everybody for all the work.
Yeah. Any other comments from our guests? Okay, I move that we adjourn the meeting.
So
Second.
moved. Second.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone, and we'll be talking soon.
Catherine.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you all.
bye.
Have a
Bye
good
all.
night.